They lived off the land, fought gators for survival, and became TV legends. But some of their stories took a dark turn no one saw coming. In 2010, a television phenomenon emerged from the swamps of Louisiana Swamp People. What started as a simple reality series quickly exploded into a cultural force. Viewers across the world found themselves captivated by the raw, untamed world of Cajun alligator hunters. These were not actors. These were generational hunters, men and women who didn't just survive in the bayou, they thrived. With rifles in hand, courage in their veins, and tradition in their hearts, they chased monsters through muddy waters for little more than pride and family legacy. Each episode delivered high-stakes thrills, the splash of a tail, the snap of powerful jaws, the thunder of gunfire echoing through the mist. But while audiences watched from the safety of their couches, the lives of these hunters unfolded far beyond what the cameras revealed. Beneath the surface of their fearless exteriors was another story not told in the show's opening credits. For some, fame would become a curse. Legal troubles, violent altercations, and devastating losses would haunt many of the faces fans once admired. Because behind the myth of the swamp lies a harsh truth: survival is more than just catching gators. For some of these men, the deadliest predators weren't in the water they were within. Substance abuse, criminal behavior, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time would push several stars into the headlines for reasons that had nothing to do with hunting. It wasn't always violence or scandal. For others, tragedy struck when they least expected it. Untimely deaths and heart-wrenching losses tore through the cast of Swamp People, leaving behind pain, confusion, and unanswered questions. In some cases, their final moments happened far from the swamps they called home, proof that danger doesn't always come with teeth or claws. This isn't just a list of misfortunes. It's a journey through the highs and lows of people who gave viewers a glimpse into an ancient, vanishing way of life. It's about real people with real demons, whose lives spiraled in ways no one could have predicted. And for fans who followed their every move, the truth hits hard. Because what happened after the cameras stopped rolling? That's what this story is really about. This episode exposes the arrests they hoped you'd forget, the tragic deaths they couldn't outrun, and the moments that rewrote their legacies forever. We'll dig deep into official records, fan reactions, and behind-the-scenes whispers to separate fact from rumor and reveal what the show never dared to say. Let's begin with the legends whose arrest shocked everyone who admired them. They were father-son icons on the show. But one night at a gas station changed everything. RJ and J. Paul Molinaire wasn't just part of Swamp People, they were the show's living muscle. They brought a raw, primal energy that no one else could replicate. RJ, the father, was a world champion arm wrestler with a grip like iron, while J. Paul, his son, was a former Golden Gloves boxer with fists hardened by both sport and survival. Together, they were revered not only for their strength but for the knowledge passed down through generations of Native American swamp hunters. Fans admired them. The show needed them. But fame, as it often does, came with a darker price. In August of 2013, the Molinaires found themselves on the wrong side of the law. What should have been an ordinary day in Bourg, Louisiana, took a violent detour into chaos. A confrontation with a 24-year-old man that began as a simple road rage spat escalated quickly. Instead of driving away, RJ and J. Paul followed the man to Roland's Mini-Mart, where a full-blown assault unfolded. Witnesses reported a beer bottle being used as a weapon. The victim was left battered, his face swollen, a black eye glaring through the swelling, his jaw bruised, and a large knot formed on his forehead. This wasn't a scuffle, it was a scene of carnage, and both men were at the center of it. Soon after, arrest warrants were issued. The Molinaires turned themselves in and were booked on charges of aggravated battery. It wasn't just a legal mess, it was a public scandal. How could two of the show's most respected and beloved figures become the face of a violent assault? The fan base was divided. Some were shocked. Others were skeptical. Everyone was watching. In court, the Molinaire legal team painted a very different picture. They claimed they were the victims, that the young man had instigated the fight by hurling a beer bottle at their vehicle. They insisted it was self-defense, not aggression. Their lawyers pushed for a deeper investigation, arguing that the altercation had been twisted by the media and misunderstood by the public. But no one could erase the images of the man's bruised face or the troubling headlines that followed. Yet, despite the severity of the charges, something unusual happened. RJ and J. Paul didn't disappear. They weren't blacklisted. They returned to Swamp People, continuing to appear for several more seasons. And although the court records never revealed a conviction, the stain of that night never fully faded. Their once heroic image became entangled with the ironic warriors of the swamp, humbled by their own fury outside a convenience store. Their appearances grew fewer over time. Whether it was the weight of public perception, private guilt, or a deliberate decision to distance themselves, the Molinaires slowly slipped from the spotlight. Their silence spoke volumes. No formal statement, no dramatic exit, just a quiet retreat from the world that once celebrated them. But not every cast member walked away from their story. Some didn't make it out alive. He was born to hunt in the bayou. But his end didn't come from a gator, it came from the road. Randy Edwards carried a legacy in his blood. As the son of Junior and Teresa Edwards, he was born into the swamp life, molded by its traditions, and hardened by its unforgiving terrain. From a young age, Randy was raised on the rhythms of the Atchafalaya Basin, where hunting wasn't just survival, it was a rite of passage. Alongside his brother Willie, Randy wasn't just a participant on Swamp People, he was a cornerstone, part of the show's original DNA. With quiet confidence and natural skill, he helped shape its earliest seasons, offering viewers a front-row seat to a family whose lives were as wild and raw as the waters they commanded. But in the shadows of television fame, tragedy was quietly circling. On the morning of September 15, 2018, everything changed. Randy, driving his 2002 Chevrolet Silverado in Iberville Parish, Louisiana, lost control while attempting to navigate a curve. His truck veered off the right side of LA 76, slammed into a utility pole, and rolled. The impact was violent, and Randy, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, was ejected from the vehicle. When first responders arrived, there was nothing they could do. Randy was pronounced dead at the scene. He was only 35 years old. The shock hit like a thunderclap through the Swamp People community. This wasn't a man brought down by a charging gator or a misstep in the wild. This was something eerily normal, painfully sudden, and devastatingly human. Fans who had watched Randy grow from a quiet hunter into a respected television figure now mourned the loss of someone who had become part of their lives. The Edwards family released a statement through Facebook, requesting privacy, but the heartbreak echoed far beyond their home. Messages poured in. Tributes flooded social media. Cast members, past and present, shared stories, memories, and sorrow. What made the tragedy even harder to swallow were the unanswered questions that followed. Authorities noted suspected impairment as a possible factor in the crash, but the toxicology report was never made public. Silence took over where answers should have been. Was it fatigue? Alcohol? A momentary lapse in attention? No one outside the investigation ever got the full picture. And maybe that was the point: some truths, no matter how painful, remain buried in the mud. Randy left behind a wife and 3 young children. A family that once bonded over the hunt now faced the unrelenting stillness of loss. And though the show moved on, the absence lingered. It wasn't just a death, it was the collapse of a family pillar, the kind of loss that ripples through time long after the cameras stop rolling. While Randy's death shocked fans, another cast member's arrest stunned everyone for just how far he fell. Once praised for raw hunting skill, he now stands accused of exploiting the very swamp he claimed to love. Roger Rivers wasn't just another face on Swamp People, he was a symbol of everything the show stood for. Introduced in Season 5, he carved out his place in the hearts of viewers through unfiltered grit and fearless determination. He wasn't polished for television. He was rough around the edges, direct, raw, and dangerously real. Whether it was wrestling gators or hauling lines alone in murky waters, Roger brought a kind of primal energy that screamed authenticity. He claimed he didn't do it for money, for fame, or even for legacy. He did it, he said, to live off the land. "It's what I do, and I love it." That was the line that echoed across the fanbase until everything began to unravel. In 2017, that image was shattered in a single blow. Rivers was arrested and hit with more than 18 separate wildlife-related charges. The list was staggering: 6 counts of illegally selling alligator snapping turtles, 3 counts for selling reptiles and amphibians without proper licensing, and several others for harvesting and selling alligator meat without the state-mandated tags. Even more damning were the allegations of illegally selling deer meat and recreationally caught fish. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a full-blown exposé of someone now painted as a serial violator of wildlife law. Fans were stunned. How could someone who had claimed to live for the swamp be so deeply entrenched in the illegal trade that destroyed it? This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about exploitation. The man once admired for honoring the land was suddenly revealed as someone allegedly profiting from its most endangered creatures. And just when it seemed he might fade into obscurity, Rivers resurfaced this time not as a poacher, but as a fraud. In September 2022, he was arrested again, this time for residential contractor fraud. He had reportedly taken $6,000 from a client for a job he never completed, vanishing without a trace. What was once a swamp hunter's legend had now become a sad and sobering cautionary tale of a man whose choices led him further and further from the life he once preached. Roger Rivers had always said he would never stop hunting, never stop living off the land. But the law, indifferent to passion and legacy, had other ideas. And with each arrest, each headline, and each legal document, the man fans thought they knew became harder and harder to recognize. Whether it was greed, desperation, or simply a broken moral compass, the result was the same, a legacy drowned in contradiction. And he wasn't the only one whose off-screen life took a violent, personal turn. On screen, he was tough and lovable. Off-screen, he was accused of things no one wanted to believe. Joe LaFont, better known to fans as Trapper Joe, was a pillar of Swamp People's early success. With his gravelly voice, weather-worn grit, and no-nonsense approach to alligator hunting, he embodied the rugged swamp spirit. Alongside his stepson Tommy Chauvin, their chemistry felt effortless. They weren't acting. They were living the hunt, carrying generations of Cajun know-how into the public eye. But as millions tuned in to watch them conquer the bayou, a far darker chapter was unfolding away from the cameras, one that would come to define Joe's legacy more than any hunt ever could. In June of 2012, Joe's name exploded across headlines, but not for anything caught on camera. While staying at a resort near Walt Disney World in Florida, he was arrested for an incident that stunned fans and disturbed even those closest to him. According to multiple witnesses, Joe had been seen punching his girlfriend in the chest, shaking her violently, and attempting to burn her with a lit cigarette. Both appeared intoxicated, but what remained undeniable was the brutality of the act. Hotel security intervened. Police responded. Trapper Joe was taken into custody. The man who once stood as a stoic protector of tradition was now at the center of an alleged act of domestic violence. But the storm didn't end there. In May 2015, only a few years later, Joe found himself facing the law once again, this time back in Louisiana. His live-in girlfriend accused him of breaking two of her ribs during a physical altercation. According to her account, Joe had shoved her to the ground during an argument, causing serious internal injury. She initially refused medical attention, claiming she was too embarrassed. But the pain didn't fade, and when she finally sought treatment, X-rays confirmed what she feared were fractures in her ribs. Despite not pursuing charges herself, the case was forwarded to the district attorney's office, signaling that the state saw enough merit in the allegations to investigate further. Both incidents, though never resulting in public convictions, left scars that couldn't be erased. Fans who once viewed Joe as a gritty, lovable swamp elder now had to reconcile the show's image with a man repeatedly accused of violence behind closed doors. And Swamp People, a show that had built its empire on authenticity and character, began to quietly step away. Joe's appearances dwindled. By 2016, he was gone entirely. No grand exit. No explanation. Just a quiet disappearance into the fog of public memory, replaced by new faces, and protected by old silence. But silence doesn't erase the truth. His reputation never fully recovered. To some, he remained the gruff, legendary gator hunter of earlier seasons. But to others, the allegations couldn't be unseen. They hovered over his legacy like a dark cloud, a brutal reminder of how quickly admiration can dissolve into disappointment. From domestic violence to assaulting police officers, what Nicholas Payne did crossed even more dangerous lines. He once had a chance at TV stardom, but instead, he made headlines for attacking a cop and fleeing into the woods. Nicholas Payne had a golden opportunity, one that thousands would have fought for. As the apprentice to Bruce Mitchell, one of Swamp People's most recognized faces, Payne had a front-row seat to the inner workings of bayou hunting. Viewers saw a young man learning the ropes, gaining trust, and seemingly preparing to step into a larger role. It could have been the beginning of a redemptive story of an unknown name rising into the spotlight through hard work, legacy, and tradition. But just as quickly as the door opened, Nicholas blew it wide off its hinges, and not in the way anyone expected. In September 2011, the quiet swamplands of Louisiana were rattled by a jarring and violent episode. deputies from the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office responded to a call in Pearl River. Payne had reportedly been locked out of his home and was causing a loud and disruptive scene. Officers arrived hoping to de-escalate the situation, but what happened next shocked even the most seasoned lawmen. As a female deputy attempted to issue a citation, Payne struck her in the chest in an act of defiance that escalated the moment from disorderly to dangerous. Instead of submitting to arrest, Payne took off. He vanished into the nearby woods, launching a manhunt that quickly grew urgent. A K-9 unit was deployed, and it didn't take long before the dog found him. When they caught up, the damage was already done. Payne was bitten during the pursuit and had to be taken to the hospital for treatment. But the injuries were only the beginning of his downfall. As authorities processed his identity, another revelation emerged. Payne wasn't just in trouble in Louisiana, he had an outstanding warrant in Florida. He had previously failed to appear in court on drug-related charges connected to paraphernalia possession. Now what had started as a local disturbance had ballooned into a multi-state legal quagmire. With charges of disturbing the peace, battery of a police officer, resisting arrest, and being a fugitive from justice hanging over him, Payne was officially locked in. His bail was set at $10,000. He never posted it. The fallout was swift. The History Channel confirmed that Nicholas Payne would not return to Swamp People. His contract was terminated. His appearances were erased from the show's future. The young apprentice who once stood beside Bruce Mitchell as a rising figure in Cajun tradition now sat behind bars, remembered not for his potential, but for the chaos he left behind. And then there's the king himself, Troy Landry, whose reputation took a hit in an undercover sting. The most famous man in the swamp got caught in a trap he never saw coming, one set by wildlife agents. Troy Landry wasn't just a cast member, he was the beating heart of Swamp People. Nicknamed the King of the Swamp, he symbolized everything the show stood for: tradition, discipline, fearlessness, and an unwavering connection to the wild. With his signature yell, unmatched hunting instincts, and deep-rooted Louisiana pride, Troy built a legacy that even casual viewers couldn't ignore. He wasn't chasing fame, he was preserving a way of life. But in 2024, something happened that turned the tables. This time, it wasn't Troy tracking prey, it was the authorities tracking him. It started quietly, with a tip. Someone contacted the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, alleging that illegal gator lines marked with suspicious white flags had been set in a restricted area on Lake Powell in St. Mary Parish. The LDWF took the matter seriously. They launched an undercover sting operation, setting up surveillance and waiting in silence. Then, it happened. In the early hours, officials observed Troy arriving by boat with a 28-year-old woman and a cameraman. What followed was undeniable. The woman retrieved a line holding a live alligator, and Troy speared it before loading it into the boat. When confronted, Troy's initial defense was vague. He claimed they were only scouting. But when the officers presented what they'd seen, every move documented, Troy conceded. He admitted to killing the gator and not having the proper tags for that zone. He also confessed to cutting a dead alligator loose earlier that day, which was later discovered floating in the water, attached to the same kind of unauthorized line. In a single moment, the king of the swamp had gone from legend to violator. The consequences came swiftly. Authorities seized the improperly tagged alligator, the boat, and the motor. Troy was cited for 2 wildlife violations: failure to tag an alligator and taking an alligator in an unauthorized area. Each citation carried the weight of up to a $950 fine and 120 days in jail. Though he wasn't incarcerated, the symbolic blow was heavy. Fans were stunned. Some dismissed it as an overreaction, a minor misstep by a man who'd spent decades respecting the swamp. Others saw it differently, a betrayal of the very code he had lived by. When asked for comment, Troy offered only a cryptic line. "I also got a speeding ticket last month," he said. "I have nothing to say about it." His daughter-in-law downplayed the incident too, calling it just a ticket. But the public wasn't so quick to move on. The quiet deflection didn't erase the sting. For a man who built a career on integrity, even the smallest misjudgment came with amplified scrutiny. But what his son Chase did was far louder and far more dangerous. He thought a shrimp boat was going to flip his skiff, so he pulled the trigger. Chase Landry, the son of Troy Landry and heir to the swamp's most recognized name, had grown into a symbol of youthful intensity and Cajun pride. Sharp-tongued, fast-acting, and fiercely protective of his turf, Chase was never one to back down from danger. On Swamp People, he commanded respect through instinct and raw emotion. But in 2016, that same fire turned into a full-blown crisis, one that involved a gun, a misjudged threat, and a moment that could have ended in catastrophe. The incident unfolded in Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana, where Chase was navigating Bayou Chain aboard his skiff, a vessel heavy with alligator carcasses from a successful hunt. According to his own account, a shrimp boat approached at high speed. The wake it created, he believed, could swamp his boat and flip it over, destroying the day's haul and possibly risking lives. In that split second, adrenaline took over. Chase reached for a firearm and opened fire, aiming directly at the oncoming vessel. The bullet struck a plastic gasoline can mounted on the shrimp boat's cabin, piercing it and sending fuel spilling across the deck. It was a shot that could have ignited more than just controversy. Wayne Moyon, the shrimp boat operator, later told investigators he was approximately 250 yards away at the time of the incident and had posed no threat. But Chase didn't wait around for questions. He disappeared into the bayou's winding arteries. The law caught up to him during a routine traffic stop later that month. There, without resistance, Chase admitted to firing the shot, explaining that he'd been afraid of capsizing. His explanation didn't prevent the consequences. He was arrested and charged with the illegal discharge of a firearm, facing public scrutiny unlike anything he'd experienced before. News of the incident spread quickly. For fans, it ignited a fierce debate. Was Chase reckless, or was he acting on pure survival instinct in the heat of the moment? In the chaotic world of swamp hunting, split-second decisions often mean life or death. But the line between caution and aggression had never been so clearly tested. What disturbed many was not the shot itself, but the location, the risk, and what might have happened had the fuel ignited. Despite the charges and the media noise, Chase remained part of Swamp People. There was no permanent exile, no dramatic fall from grace. Instead, he returned to the screen quieter, perhaps, but still carrying the same fierce spirit. For some, it was redemption. For others, a warning. Either way, the incident marked a turning point in how fans viewed not just Chase, but the increasingly blurred boundary between survival and law. Some left the show through violence, others through death. One such name, Mitchell Gist. They didn't die in the swamp, but they lived and breathed it until their final moments. Few names in Swamp People held as much quiet reverence as Mitchell Gist. With his thick beard, humble spirit, and unwavering dedication to the wild, Mitchell wasn't chasing attention, he was chasing a way of life. Alongside his brother Glenn, he embodied the soul of the show. Their bond, forged in blood and strengthened through survival, was a living testament to the old ways. Together, they fished, hunted, and built a life on the water, never for the cameras, but for each other. That's what made Mitchell's death in 2012 so painful, so personal. He wasn't filming. He wasn't even hunting. He was simply working on a houseboat near Bell River, crafting another piece of the life he loved, when he suddenly collapsed. First responders tried CPR. He was rushed to the hospital. But it was too late. The cause was later confirmed to be a heart attack, unexpected, unstoppable, and cruel. He died doing what he loved, but that didn't ease the heartbreak. His absence was more than a loss, it was a fracture in the foundation of Swamp People. And then there was Tyler the dog, who captured hearts without ever speaking a word. Bruce Mitchell's loyal hunting companion wasn't just a sidekick, he was family. Adopted from a shelter as a gift for Bruce's daughter, Tyler quickly bonded with Bruce and became a fixture on hunts. He was fearless, intelligent, and fiercely protective. He chased gators, retrieved prey, and warned of danger long before it arrived. But in 2014, after years of loyal service, Tyler succumbed to congestive heart failure. He passed peacefully in his sleep, but the grief that followed was anything but quiet. Bruce announced his passing with a heavy heart, sharing memories of 13 unforgettable years. Fans wept. Tributes poured in. Because Tyler wasn't just a dog, he was a symbol of everything pure in that chaotic, muddy world. And just when the show seemed to be moving forward, another tragedy nearly claimed yet another beloved figure. Dusty Crumb, famously known as the Wild Man, was built for danger. He hunted Burmese pythons in the Everglades with nothing but guts and grit. But in November 2021, a freak accident nearly ended his story. Riding in a truck along I-75 in Florida, a tire blew out. The vehicle lost control, fishtailed, and flipped 3 times. Dusty's leg was flung through a shattered window and crushed beneath the weight of the rolling truck. In a moment of sheer will, he used his shirt as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding, saving his own life while waiting for help. He was airlifted to the hospital and underwent 5 grueling surgeries. Doctors weren't sure they could save his leg. And yet, against all odds, he endured. After a month in recovery and countless hours in rehabilitation, Dusty didn't give up. He didn't fade away. He came back stronger, scarred, and determined. By 2023, he returned for Swamp People, Serpent Invasion, proving that even in pain, passion refuses to die. These weren't just cast members. They were the beating heart of a world built on instinct, loyalty, and resilience. Their losses and their comebacks shaped the emotional backbone of the show. Each name, each memory, remains etched into the muddy waters they once ruled. And while some cast members recovered, others like Tommy Chauvin never returned to the swamp. Drop your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.